Coming up on Transformers University, it's time to face the future head on as we enter the first original Japanese Transformers animated series. We're talking Transformers Headmasters right now on Transformers University. Hello, my friend, and welcome to episode 107 of Transformers University. I am your host, Anthony Bricali, owner, operator, madman behind TFU.INFO, the website, the Tory Archive, this podcast, TFU News and Views podcast, and oh so much more. And I want to welcome you to the beginning of our journey with Japanese Transformers animated series. And this is the first part of what will be many series, actually. Come to think of it, I was going to say 3, but it's only 3 in G1, and there are many more to come. But this time around, we are talking Transformers Headmasters. Now, if you haven't hopped on last episode, I do recommend you go back and listen to episode 106, where we talk about Omni Productions, the company behind the dubs of Transformers Headmasters and Victory and Master Force, because it's important to know that we are going to talk a bit about the dubs and the subtitled versions as appeared on the Shout Factory DVDs in our coverage of Transformers Headmasters. So we will talk a bit about what was intended in the Japanese language. We will play some of the differences in the dubs and get a good laugh most of the time at those things. And we'll talk about where this series fits in the overall lore of Transformers, in the lore of G1, and its long-term and lasting effects on the brand and the fandom. So we're in for a ride. We're in for a new series. This is the first series post American G1. In fact, American G1 ends at the end of season 3 in Japan. There is no the rebirth in Japan. Our season 4 in the United States and in the West, that didn't air there. So this story actually takes place pretty much right after the return of Optimus Prime. It's also worth noting that these episodes, for the most part, are a bit shorter. They do contain recaps at the top of each episode. And then with titles and themes, they're about 20 minutes each of content, not counting the recaps. So that's about 5 minutes shorter than your typical G1 episode. And of course, since we are talking about a new TV series, that means a new theme song. So let's get right after it and listen to the opening theme of Transformers Headmasters. You know, I really dig that theme. It's grown on me the more I've watched a few episodes here. The words "head on" kind of start to become a battle cry for this series, and makes it fun. Now, let's talk about episode 1, because I want to get into this series. We've got 3 episodes to talk about here. We're going to talk about episodes 1, 2, and 3. Now, the first episode, and this is something we're going to get into a little bit in terms of title mismatches. So The title screen often says one thing. The actual title as translated from Japanese sometimes says another thing, and then the dub, the soundbite from the Omni Productions version, also sometimes says something different. So, for example, this one is called, as per the Shout Factory DVDs, 4 Warriors from Outer Space. On the title screen, it's just called Warriors from Space. And according to TF Wiki, the literal translation of what's on the screen is 4 warriors come out of the sky. Now, it's also worth noting the Shout Factory DVDs are missing the recaps, the episode recaps that are at the beginning of each of these episodes. And the first episode does start with a recap. Recaps parts of Transformers the movie, as well as a bit of G1 as a whole. And I had to dig around for the Omni Productions recap of episode 1. But here it is in English for you to enjoy.
The universe is a boundless ocean, and somewhere out in deep space, there is a planet called Cybertron. This planet is inhabited by tough, battle-hardened warriors called Transformers. However, in the millions of years that have passed, Cybertron has slowly been drained of its energy resources due to a civil war which raged on the planet from time immemorial. The two sides involved are the Autobots, who represent good, and the Decepticons, who are evil. As there is no more energy on Cybertron, the two sides were forced to go to Earth seeking new sources of energy. Once again, the forces clash. The leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime, appointed a young warrior, Rodimus Prime, to be the new commander-in-chief. In the meantime, Galvatron, leader of the Decepticons, had rebuilt his forces and launched a massive attack. However, the Autobots finally won, and peace was once again restored on Cybertron. But one day, in the year 2010, the long-exiled chief of the Decepticons returned. War broke out once again on Cybertron. Optimus Prime was determined to safeguard peace in the universe, so he set up a second defensive HQ on the planet Sydney. At the same time, the Decepticons were also consolidating their military forces on the planet Jolo.
The 4 soldiers from the sky.
Okay, we have to talk about a few things in that recap. Optimus Prime's death is reenacted, but is not from Transformers the movie. As I've mentioned earlier in this podcast and other episodes, Transformers the movie didn't show in Japan until 1989, so 2 years after this show aired in Japan. So there's a lot of places in the manga and in bits of season 3 where they've had to fill in gaps in the story by explaining what happened in Transformers the movie without showing what happened in Transformers the movie. And this recap actually has Optimus Prime getting shot and dying in front of Autobot headquarters and turning gray, but not the way he dies at Autobot City in Transformers the movie. So go search out the video for this. It shouldn't be too hard to find. I found it fairly quickly on YouTube. It's pretty cool, actually, to see this scene done in a different way. So the episode begins with Galvatron and the Decepticons arriving on Cybertron via space bridge, and they plan to take control of Vector Sigma. Weird Wolf, who's new to the Decepticons, he's taken the lead on this project and takes Mindwipe and Skullcruncher with him. And the new to the Decepticons thing is actually something that the Japanese manga covers prior to this series coming out. So there is some story in there, and we've covered it here on the show, that the and we'll find out a little bit more about this in the series, that the Decepticon Headmasters are kind of new to the Decepticons and have just joined up. So elsewhere on Cybertron, the new Decepticon Headmasters attack the Autobot base. The Dinobots and Technobots respond, and the Autobots call to Athenia, which in the dubs is called Sydnea. Why? I don't know, but that's what they decided to call it. Athenia, we last saw in season 3, in episode 1, Five Faces of Darkness Part 1. It's the place where they had the Robot Olympics. The Autobots have a base now on Sydnea. And so on Athenia, at the base on Athenia, is Optimus Prime with Hot Rod, Hound, the Aerial Bots, RC Smokescreen, and Sideswipe. Optimus decides he's going to send troops from Earth to Cybertron, and then tells Spike and Carly to hightail it to Athenia. On Cybertron, the Decepticons are losing this battle, and Mindwipe uses his hypno power to put Grimlock to sleep, and in a moment of comedy, he also puts Skullcruncher to sleep. Back on Earth, Ultra Magnus and the Autobots who are with him, including Prowl, who should be dead, but isn't because the Japanese didn't get Transformers the movie yet, along with Sideswipe, who was just on Athenia and probably is an animation error, are fighting the Decepticons, some Triple Changers, Soundwave, the Stunticons, and this guy.
All right, listen up. I'm the ninja consultant for the Decepticons. My name is Six Shot.
Now, that's what I mean by the Omni Productions dubs. In fact, I left a quote out of our previous episode where I kind of ran through a few of the more famous ones. That one's pretty famous, too. I don't know why the translation of Six Shot's job, when Omni Productions took it, made him the ninja consultant. But I do want to know, is he a ninja who consults the Decepticons, or is he someone who consults the Decepticons about being ninjas? Inquiring minds want to know. You tell me what you think at TFU_info on Twitter. Elsewhere on Earth, Wheelie and Daniel are running around, and they run into Tripticon. They get chased, and the young Autobot and the young human, lead him to a bridge. The bridge collapses under Tripticon's weight, and he falls into the water, and Wheelie and Daniel get away. Ultra Magnus and Six Shot continue to fight until...
The robot train is here! Ah, good. Go to the space bridge at once!
That's right. The robot train arrives. That is the robots that will form Raiden, who we have not seen yet, but they are a bunch of Autobot trains that combine in vehicle mode as well as robot mode. So they arrive. Ultra Magnus and company head to the space bridge, and the Decepticons follow. Eventually, they get ahead of the Autobots and attack. The robot train flies off separately towards the space bridge, and the Constructicons flying behind it follow it and shoot it down. Just then, a Metroplex arrives with an important message.
Get over to the space bridge right away!
So, everyone gets to Autobot City, including Metroplex, who drives through the front door, and they take the robot train to Cybertron. This is actually something we'll see multiple times in the next couple episodes. The Autobots need the robot train to actually go through the space bridge. It's never been needed before. I'm not sure why it's needed now, but on Cybertron, the battle rages on, and everyone arrives from Earth and Athenia. On the flip side, Cup, Spike, Carly, they all meet Hot Rod and Blur on Athenia, and they spot something on their computer. I've affectionately come to refer to the Athenian base as we go on as the box of exposition, because Cup and Blur and eventually RC They kind of just are there to spout things out that are going on elsewhere, and kind of just all mull about in this room. It's almost like they're locked in this poor little room on Athenia. But back on Cybertron, Daniel and Wheelie, they try to go find Vector Sigma themselves, but they run into the Predacons, only to be rescued by the train team. The train team scolds Daniel, and our scene cuts back to Athenia. And the folks on Athenia, they're watching their computer, and they see a starship.
We built this city.
But on Cybertron, the fight continues. Superion fights Abominus, Optimus Prime fights Devastator, then Defensor fights Devastator as Optimus heads to Vector Sigma, and the Dinobots fight Decepticon Headmasters. Mindwipe, he knocks out all the Dinobots and all the Throttlebots with his Hypno power until Starship arrives.
We built this city.
And out of the Starship, the Autobot Headmasters arrive, and Chrome Dome and Weird Wolf have a little chat.
Oh, so it's you! Long time no see, Weird Wolf.
Now, as I mentioned before, this references the Transformers manga that we talked about a few episodes ago. They have both fled their home planet. The Autobot Headmasters have chased the Decepticon Headmasters, and we'll actually find out a little bit more in the backstory in the next episode. Now, before we move on to episode 2, I just want to let you know there is a closing theme to Headmasters with some interesting visuals, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. But right now, before we head into episode 2 of Transformers Headmasters, please give this a quick listen. Hey, want to help out this podcast or the website TFU.INFO? There's a number of ways you can do it. Let me tell you how. You can help us directly by joining our Patreon and enrolling as a student at Transformers University. There, you'll get early access to the podcast as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes peeks and perks for as little as $1 a month. Sign up is quick and easy. Just swing on by to www.patreon.com/TFUINFO. Another way you can help us is by using our Amazon link, www.tfu.info/Amazon. Type that into your browser whenever you want to shop at Amazon, and a portion of what you spend will be contributed back to us. It's that easy. Finally, you don't become the world's longest running transforming toy archive without some help from other fans. We're always on the hunt for photos of figures and accessories we're missing from our pages. If you'd like to contribute, go to tfu.info/help for a list of what we need, or send an email to info@tfu.info. tfu.info, the Alpha Trion and Omega Prime of transforming toys. Now, back to the show. And with that, we are going to head on, get it, to episode 2 of the Headmasters, and that is called The Mystery of Planet Master, or as the dub calls it,
The Tale of the Master Star.
And picks up right where episode 1 left off. The Headmasters fight. We see the Headmaster gimmick in the robot's conversion to vehicle mode. And the fight for Vector Sigma rages on. The Combiners fight, and the Starship joins the battle. And in that, the Decepticons retreat. From there, the Starship heads to Athenia, where we meet Cerebros, a.k.a. Fortress, as he's called in Japan. And Cup and Cerebros, we find out, are old friends. Here's where we get some exposition. We flash back to Cerebros leading Cybertronians who then, in the past, 4 million years ago, could not transform to the planet Master. There, they developed their transformation abilities to form the heads of their bodies, known as transtectors. The heads are known as that, not the bodies. Cerebros then tells of Scorponok, though we don't really see him. We do see him in silhouette, and the evil Headmasters and how they are basically chasing them through the galaxy. So back on Cybertron, Optimus heads towards Vector Sigma and fights the Guardian robots that we saw back the last time in Season 2 when we were heading to Vector Sigma. He also runs into Alpha Trion's ghost back on Athenia at the base in the box of exposition. we find out that Optimus needs the Matrix to power Vector Sigma. But the Matrix is on Earth, and the location is known only to Optimus Prime. Hot Rod and Blaster go to Earth to find the Matrix. And on the way out the door, Blaster gives Wheelie a mixtape to cheer him up. On Earth, the Autobots arrive at Autobot base, and Ratbat is caught spying. Blaster sends Steeljaw, Rewind, Eject, and Ramhorn after him, but Soundwave is also in the base, helping Ratbat to escape. We find out that, at least according to the sub, that plasma energy is needed to restore the Matrix. And in fact, the sub is the only thing that says it's called plasma energy. I believe the Japanese language of what I've read on this actually just calls it energy, and even the dub only calls it energy. Elsewhere, Hot Rod is on Earth looking for the Matrix with a Blaster, and Soundwave is sent to follow them. As they follow them, I think it's the North Pole, but it's somewhere cold, the Predacons attack Hot Rod and Blaster. The tapes join the fight from Blaster, and the Predacons try to combine, but in the middle of their combination, they are rammed by Hot Rod in his vehicle mode and cannot combine. Menasor and Superion join the fight, and so does Soundwave as he tries to shoot Hot Rod in the back. But Blaster knocks Hot Rod out of the way, and Hot Rod goes to find the Matrix. And this leads to one of the most famous showdowns of Headmasters. Blaster versus Soundwave. And I hate to tell you, it doesn't really live up to the hype. It's actually pretty good. It's not bad. It's not the epic battle you would think it would be, because it starts out with the two of them standing about 10 feet apart from each other, shooting at each other, and missing a lot.
Okay, then. We'll find out who's going to win.
Just give me your best shot.
Then they each punch a hole in each other's chest before Blaster punches Soundwave so hard that his arm comes off. Soundwave then attacks Blaster, slams him into the side of a mountain. They come down, and Blaster drops the people's elbow on Soundwave. Soundwave stands up and then explodes to this famous reaction of Galvatron watching on a screen.
Darn that Soundwave.
Yes, darn that Soundwave. Because Hot Rod comes back to find Blaster, and Blaster is about to join the Matrix and sends Hot Rod off with these words.
Billy, you okay?
Not really. Find the power pack. Rescue Optimus Prime. Go!
Now, it's fun to mention that the dub refers to the Matrix as the power pack. It's such a weird thing, especially if you grew up in the 90s, where Power Pack was a comic about 4 adolescent mutants making their way around space in the Marvel Universe. So it has this weird connotation to it. Now, as Blaster dies, Laserbeak shows up to pick up Soundwave's decapitated head, which is turned white. Blaster and Soundwave have both turned white, which I believe, from what I've read, is in line with the deaths in Call of the Primitives, even though no one actually really died. But they don't turn gray. But other characters will turn gray when they die in coming episodes. Ratbat and Buzzsaw are also there and pick up some other pieces of Soundwave. And back on Athenia in the box of exposition, Blaster's death has reached the base. Everyone is sad. Wheelie decides to play his mixtape, and it just plays some sad violin.
We'll always remember you, Billy.
Elsewhere, the Autobot Headmasters vow to help as Optimus and Hot Rod continue their searches. And that is episode 2 of Transformers Headmasters. And so, once more, we head on to episode 3 of Transformers Headmasters. According to the menu screen of the Shout Factory DVDs, it's called Behold, the Birth of Double Prime. according to the titles subtitled, it's called The Rebirth of Rodimus Prime. The actual title is Birth of the Fantastic Double Prime.
夢のダブルコンボイ誕生
And the Omni Productions dub calls it
The birth of a new leader.
Hot Rod and the Headmasters. They continue their search for the Matrix on Earth. Galvatron, Cyclonus, and the Headmasters join Six Shot on Earth to talk plans to stop Hot Rod. Cyclonus, he actually refers to himself in the sub as Air Commander, but in the dub.
I am the space consultant from Jalo. My name is...
I didn't ask her to speak.
So, space consultant, that's like what? A guy who reorganizes your closets, right? Ultra Magnus, the Protectobots, the Technobots, Jazz, Trax, Inferno, Prowl, they all plan to back up Hot Rod. As part of this backup, Defensor finds Bruticus. Protectobots really find the Combaticons, and everyone combines on the road. And they fight, and eventually Defensor wins by dropping multiple rocks on Bruticus's head. Hot Rod and the Headmasters, they come up empty. And Hot Rod starts to think that maybe Optimus has hidden the Matrix in plain sight, which is why they've been searching these kind of deep cuts locations almost, right? And not found anything. However, the dub gets this completely wrong.
Hey, do you mean maybe we've been paying too much attention to the obvious places?
That's right. That's just what I'm thinking. We've been looking in the wrong places. Maybe they've stashed it somewhere that no one would ever think of looking.
Now, on Athenia, the Autobots there... Yep, they're chatting it up. Cerebros wants to go to Cybertron to inform Optimus Prime that he needs the Matrix. And on Cybertron, Optimus Prime is still looking for Vector Sigma and is attacked by energy leeches. On Earth, Hot Rod and the Headmasters, they check the Energon store, which in the dub is called this.
Here we are, everyone. We've arrived at the Conan Energy Center.
Not sure why Conan has an energy center, but he does. And just then, the Terracons attack. The Technobots arrive. We have another, combiner fight. And Hot Rod uses the diversion to enter the base. Hot Rod finds the Matrix in the basement of the base next to Pee Wee Herman's bike and realizes he needs to get it, the Matrix, not the bike, to the space bridge. Just then, Galvatron, the Decepticon Headmasters arrive, and we have more of a fight. The Autobots that are there cover Hot Rod, and he boards the robot train to the space bridge to Cybertron. On Cybertron, Coupler and RC, they're hanging out in the box of Exposition, and Daniel and Wheelie decide to head to the arcade of Exposition. Cerebros begins his hunt for Optimus Prime, and Optimus Prime continues to look for Vector Sigma and ends up fighting what I call our Union Rats. They're giant spiked rats. They're referred to as hedgehogs, I believe, in the Japanese scripts. But he's fighting Union Rat. If you don't know what Union Rat is, Google it, because that's pretty much what he was fighting in that scene. Eventually, he does find Vector Sigma, but while he's there, Cyclonus and Scourge, they're already waiting. How did they get there so much faster? Prime's been there before. And because they're with Vector Sigma, because of somewhat the convoluted plot of this whole thing, they have a bit of a power boost. Just then, though, the robot train arrives on Cybertron with the folks from Earth, and Alpha Trion's ghost is about to combine with Vector Sigma when Cerebros stops him by calling out, and Hot Rod and the Headmasters all arrive. But Galvatron and his Headmasters arrive too. Alpha Trion turns to energy and commands Hot Rod to hold up the Matrix to help them light their darkness hour, and Hot Rod becomes Rodimus Prime.
Rodimus Prime! Optimus Prime!
Oh! Something strange has happened. Now there are two Optimus Primes.
Or two Optimus Primes. The dub does what it wants. And both Primes, they fight the Decepticons and win. Now, as Optimus is recharging from the Matrix from Rodimus, he realizes there isn't enough time and decides to head to Vector Sigma on his own and gets attacked by Galvatron. He actually throws Galvatron into Vector Sigma and then uses his own energy and his life force to stabilize Vector Sigma, and it kind of explodes, and Galvatron gets up and walks away. And Optimus Prime, he dies again.
Rodimus Prime, you've got to live up to my expectations. Don't let me down. In the name of peace, don't give up.
And those are some solid words of wisdom from the dub, taking a very poignant moment and really flattening it out. And Galvatron, he escapes out to Char, and that wraps up the third episode and the last one we're going to cover on this episode of Transformers University. And so I got to say, I really like this story arc. The animation's pretty good for Headmasters. It's not great. It's not like some of the best of G1, but it's certainly better than some of the worst of American G1. It's consistent. It looks cool. It's cool seeing some of these characters run around. It's not as good as some of the commercials and some of those character models, but it's cool. I gotta say, just as a whole, as a concept, like this feels like it was a really good 3-parter to open a season if this was the American series. There's some translation things that are hit or miss. There's probably some explanations that don't come across clearly going from Japanese to English, especially about how Vector Sigma works. But it's cool to see how Vector Sigma is kind of intertwined now with the Matrix. And something that we get later in Transformers fiction, in modern Transformers fiction, but definitely not in US G1. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is a closing theme to the show. And before I make you give it a quick listen, I do want to tell you that the animation here is kind of cool. It's Daniel and Spike. Usually with Daniel on Spike's shoulders and one of the Autobot Headmasters. And the Autobot Headmaster will convert into their alt form, and Daniel and Spike will try their best to mimic that form together with their human bodies. It's comical, but it's cute and it's fun. But here, there's a different song entirely at the end. Here's what it sounds like. Thanks for listening to the show. Stick around to hear what's coming up next episode, but first, I want to fill you in on a few ways you can stay in touch with the show. Want to be on the show? Leave us a voicemail at 702-763-4838. That's 702-POD-4TFU. Or send an email to info@TFU.INFO. Be sure to catch us on Twitter at TFU_info and on Facebook and Instagram under the username TFU.INFO, all one word. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TFU.INFO, where we post all of our podcasts plus special video segments, reviews, and live coverage of Transformers-related events such as New York Toy Fair and New York Comic-Con. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please visit us at www.tfu.info, the world's longest-running transforming toy archive. And with that, we are going to wrap things up for this episode of Transformers University. And so I do want to tell you what's coming up in episode 108 of the show. Now, Of course, we're staying in 1987, but we're also going to stay in Japan. I haven't talked about toys in a while, and we're going to talk about the Japanese toy line in 1987. What they got that was the same, what they got that was different, and there's some very unique items in 1987 in Japan. It's actually a fairly big line, and I'm just thinking about this off the top of my head. I haven't actually started the research, but we are going to talk about the toy line and the merch for 1987 Japan as Transformers University rolls on. As always, I want to thank my loyal listeners. I want to thank our Patreon students and our Patreon subscribers. Anyone that has contributed to the show, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Wouldn't be able to do this week to week, month to month without you. And by the time this goes out, I think we'll be on our fourth anniversary. And so I just want to thank you for taking the ride along with me. That in mind, until next time, I'm your host, Anthony Bricali, owner, operator, madman behind TFU.INFO. Till then, see ya. Wheelie and Daniel get away. Ultramagnus. The menu screen of the Shout Factory DVDs. It's called Beheard. And check. Hey, ho.